Kila mtu ashike kazi yake. Kila mtu ashike kazi yake. Alafu muone kazi gani ya faida. Alafu muone kazi gani ya faida. Mkiwa kweli mnakala kumujini. Mkiwa kweli mnakala kumujini. Msipendelee kufanya kazi moja. Msipendelee kufanya kazi moja. Kila mtu ashike kazi yake. Kila mtu ashike kazi yake. Nilipofika Nairobi nilikuwa sina ndugu wa kunipokea. Nilipofika Nairobi nilikuwa sina ndugu wa kunipokea. Kisha yake nililala siku moja. Nilishikwa na polisi we. Kisha yake nililala siku moja. Nilishikwa na polisi we. Nilipofika kwa polisi nilitozwa mpaka pesa nilikuwa nazo. Nilipofika kwa polisi nilitozwa mpaka pesa nilikuwa nazo.
I'm sure you can. No, I don't want to, but I don't want not to say whoever you want to. Is that your permission? Such permission that let you This is my auntie. She's not.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So there are those who are still outside, if they can come in, please. We're just about to start. Those who will be taking some refreshments, you feel free to come with your refreshments to the seating area. We're about to start in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
But I decided
Too much light. No. I'm after Angela. There's a family recorded.
Since we will be given
Yeah, I'm reading.
I checked. Oh, really?
Well, no, I don't know. I want to.
No, she's different. But
Oh,
even,
is
yes, but even as so, no, no,
yes.
you see, I need it because then I go to one night.
Ah,
So, but that's what I'm asking. You say, and because I jumped on the page.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Let's settle down. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. If we can settle down, please. Okay. I know there's a few of us who are still looking for seats. Can the ushers please assist? Can the ushers please assist? Thank you very much. At East African Educational Publishers. And Dr. Frank, when you're ready. And on behalf of East African Educational Publishers, I'd like to welcome you to the launch of City Boy Chronicles of Nairobi Life by Dr. Frank Njenga. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alison Giboine. I am a co-host of this event and a co-launcher from the Intellectual Book Club, which I own, and there will be some few people contesting that I own the book club. So I am publicly declaring I am the owner of the Intellectual Book Club, co-hosting the launch of this book, City Boy, with Dr. Frank, who is also a member
of the Intellectual Book Club. Welcome.
So if we can kindly be upstanding for the national anthem, thank you very much. You may be seated.
I would like to call on Mrs. Elfrida Njenga to say a prayer.
Shall we pray? Our Father in heaven, we come before you this evening with thanksgiving in our hearts for who you are in our lives. Father, we know that you love us. You know each one of us by name. And Lord, as we gather this evening to launch this book, that my Father, your presence will be felt in this place. And whatever we do, Lord, may it be pleasing to you. For we pray all this in Jesus' name.
So a few house rules before we get started. Can everybody remove their phones? Can I see your phones? Who have phones? Let's see their phones. Everyone take out your phone. I know you have them. Okay, can we press silent or turn them off on the phones now? We're limited use on the phone, so please you can have your phone on silent. The restrooms are to the back, the entrance where you're coming in. Sorry, can we have some ushers? Sorry, some ushers here to help people sit. Perpetua and your team, if you can please assist. We still have guests that need seats, and there's some seats in here. If you can please just assist them with their seats. So we have the restroom. If you go through the back, to the left, to the main entrance, there's some ladies and gents upstairs. Also the main entrance where you come in, to the right, there's also ladies. So those are where the restrooms are. There are refreshments to my left. There are snacks, there are drinks, it's an open bar for soft drinks. If you'd like alcoholic drinks, that's available on a cash bar. There are waiters on hand who will be happy to take your order. So you can just place your order for alcoholic drinks. It'll be on a cash bar. They will give you a pay bill, which you need to pay, and you can get your alcoholic refreshment of choice. Thank you. I'll just allow just a minute or two for people to sit. Thank you. Great. If we can come in, sorry. Okay, we can start.
So, welcome everybody. So, as you've all seen, the title of the book is City Boy. And the City Boy was born in a period, I think, in the 50s, 40s, you know. So, Sharon, what do you remember of Nairobi, late 60s, early 70s? What would you remember, since we weren't born before then?
No, I wasn't. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, this book, I've had the privilege of having read it, so I'm going to give you what we call leakage. This book is set in a time where schools were called, where Daktari went, King George VI. He was a Delamere school, now known as Upper Hill School. He talks of Delamere Avenue, which is now Kenyatta Avenue. Even the Safari Rally, which we call East African Safari Rally. He talks about the Coronation Safari Rally. Harambe Avenue, as we know it today, was actually Coronation Avenue. So the setting of this book, you can imagine, is a time where the roads that we know today, different names, different schools, it was a different time. In fact, there's a snippet from the book I was sharing with Alison, one of my favorites, where he gives a setting of Donholm. Donholm is an area in Nairobi, and how it came to be Donholm. Some settlers came from Scotland, and they named it after a farm in Donholm, and they had cows, and you can imagine Donholm today just full of cows, and a farm that it was. And it was such a big, expansive farm that they had to carve out JKIA from it, from him, to make the main international airport. And it was so big that when it was raining, they couldn't get their produce because there was black cotton soil. So they built a road through their farm, which is Jogoo Road today. So what I like is a very interesting history book that Daktari paints about Nairobi of that time. I don't know, Alison, what memories would you say of early Nairobi that you can think of?
I wasn't born then. I was born just the other day. But I remember stories that my father used to tell me. I remember seeing parking meters somewhere in our old Peugeot. We used to use parking meters. And then we also had the red phone booths. Anyone remember red and yellow phone booths? Yeah. Anyone remember anything else, Prof?
I remember the double-decker bus.
Oh, wow.
It was after the war.
Yes, of course. Kenya bus timetable.
Oh, wow, Kenya bus.
Starlight nightclub.
That's a very, very good memory.
I remember riding in the buses, and then the conductor would have this box that you'd roll and give you a ticket.
Yeah, oh, fantastic. City girl, what city? What do you remember?
It was before my time.
Doc, what do you remember?
I remember Sabina Joy.
What do you remember, Raquel?
I remember those iron boxes that were powered by hot charcoal for ironing clothes. You remember that?
And somebody here is gonna say the hot comb, yeah?
I remember Munyiris. Munyiris fish and chips.
I remember the mayor's Christmas tree.
Oh, wow. So,
Your telephone booths.
So we remember a lot of things. Mr. DJ, what was the music like in that time? Do you guys remember Daudi Kabaka, Baraka Mushe? I was told by PLOs that women weren't singing at the time, but I stand to be corrected. So DJ, give us music down memory lane.
I know you guys want to shake your shoulders a little bit. Come on.
You can twist.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So hopefully we have, thank you very much, DJ. Thank you. Thank you. We'll play the DJ's a fan. Of the book. And now I am going to say a quick thing about EAP before I call our chairman to speak on our behalf. So this year, East African Educational Publishers is celebrating. We have published, actually we boast for a very rich stable of authors, namely Chinua Achebe, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Professor Grace Ogot. We've also done quite a number of autobiographies that you may know, Njenga Karume, From Charcoal to Black Gold. We've got Piereni, General Opande, even Dr. Frank Njenga is joining a very luminous host of authors that we have, and we're very proud to have. Of this book. I just wanted to recognize the team that have worked hard to have this. We've got Nicholas Washira, who's the publishing manager. Him and his team have worked tirelessly. Safe. Then we have Mr. Job Mokaya, our commercial sales manager, who will be responsible for ensuring that the book is sold and available everywhere. In fact, the book is available from tomorrow morning. So we have no doubt that, as I said, that Dr. Frank Njenga is the right fit. We're very happy to have his book, and it actually comes at a critical time.
Good evening, everyone. Right, I'll be very brief. Our esteemed author, Dr. Frank Njenga, and your lovely family, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is both a distinct honor and a humbling privilege to stand before you this evening as we celebrate a landmark moment, not only for East African educational public, is also a moment to remember for Kenya, for Africa, and indeed for the written word as sacred vessel of knowledge, memory, and vision. This launch is the unveiling of a legacy. It is the affirmation of literature as a mirror to the soul of society. It is crowning of one of Kenya's most distinguished public intellectuals, author Dr. Njenga, a man who has fearlessly straddled the discipline of medicine, psychiatry, public policy, and media with eloquence, clarity, and unmatched courage. Let me begin, as is the tradition and decorum, by recognizing, I would like to recognize virtually all the guests, but that is not really possible. I wish to mention you, everyone by name, but in the interest of time and guided by humility, allow me to say this. Your presence here this evening is not merely ceremonial, it is a profound vote of confidence in the life and mind that has gone into the book, and in the power of personal narrative to inspire change and build nations. Let me also acknowledge the members of my board who are present. I think there are two of them. We have, Waidaka is one of us, a lawyer in the board. We also have Andy Achakava, stand up, yeah. I have two or three of my board members outside in Kenya. We have Mr. Kiarie Kamau, the CEO, who is representing the publishers in Kenya, somewhere in West Africa, today, and in fact this week. We also have Hilary Chakava, who is also had to travel to US for some official duties. Those are the members of the board. Senior management have already been identified and introduced, and the team has worked hard to put the book together. Now specifically about Dr. Frank Njenga. In Dr. Njenga, we find one of Kenya's most enigmatic minds, a brave man to venture into very uncomfortable corners of the national party. For over 4 decades, he has been a steady voice for mental wellness, a fierce defender of evidence-based thinking, and a practitioner who has not only treated individuals, but diagnosed society. The City Boy, Chronicles of a Nairobi Life, is not simply the story. It is Kenya's story. It is the story of ambition and disruption, of vision and vulnerability, of intellectual place in a rapidly changing country. His narrative is laced with both the fire of conviction and the sobering balm of wisdom. When a man of such pedigree takes the time to document his journey, not out of vanity, but out of service, we must pay attention. We must listen with reverence reserved to sages. We must celebrate such courage. For doing so, we dignify not just the writer, but the culture into which he was born. This work is also deeply autobiographical, not in the narrow sense of personal milestones, but in the broader sense of life ideas, and the quiet yet transformative changes they can set into motion. It reveals to us the mind of a man who has always believed that books are not ornamental, but they are foundational. Let me begin as a tradition and decorum by recognizing and welcoming each one of you present here today. I would wish to mention to you all the names, but as I said earlier, we will proceed with the program, and we acknowledge that among us we have, I can see, I think there was just John out, I think he's a CS Agriculture. He happens to be out. Looking around, I can see the governor of a county which is making leaps, Kisumu, yeah, among others. And I'm sure the events will unfold in such a way that we will appreciate the momentum as part of the book is read and so on. You have already been told something about East African Educational Publishers, a company which believes in quality work, and a company which has been in the book industry for now 60 years. We are determined to continue giving quality work. And this book launch follows closely to that book. A doctor by the name Dr. Gekonyo. I can see him here. Yeah? Yeah, so welcome to this particular lodge. And he is a doctor at heart. Yes, let me give the opportunity to those others who want to say something, but I'm sure each one of us would want to carry this book home, read it, because it has a story that will form an agenda in the years to come. Thank you very much.
So, yep, books and us, books are foundational, books are knowledge. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Intellectual Book Club. We were formed in, I think, 2012. So friends amongst ourselves decided that beyond meeting, having a drink, it would be nice to exchange knowledge. And that's how the book club was formed. We have members all over the world. So we've been around for more than 10 years. So I'd like to invite our chairman to come and introduce the members of the book club and just tell you a little bit about this fantastic intellectual book club we have.
Thank you very much. If I was in Nigeria, I would say I stand by the protocols already established. It's a good way of not offending anybody except the good Dr. Frank Njenga, who is to be celebrated this evening. We call ourselves the intellectuals, unabashedly so. And the members who are present here include my very good friend, Professor Githumuigai, who may now stand to be recognized. We also have Catherine Karanja Wasiti is here. Her Majesty Joan Mwangi is also present in the assembly. Mike Dutoit is also present with us here. Grace Madoka is present with us. The owner of the club, as we prefer to call her, Alison Ngubweni. In absentia, Professor Bitangendemo, who we congratulate on this day. The Honorable Justice Asike Mahandia. General Ali is not present with us. Vincent Ragwe, present with us. Martin Kimani. Justice Isaac Lenaola, present with us. Julie Bagaine, the good doctor, is not present with us. Amelina, who is in the United States of America. And of course, the she-elephant herself, Njoki Kaigai. Barack Okwaro Maina Muluka, who is not present. Anybody who is not as Lee Nyachai is there, and of course, Dr. Frank Njenga. You know, it is not mine to speak, but the good Dr. Frank Njenga believed that all of us are, as they used to say in Latin, non-composmente, that we are on the spectrum. And when you read the book, you'll discover very many things. He grappled with Latin, and the only Latin phrase he ever remembered was ex nihilo nihil fit, that nothing comes out of nothing. And many of you in this assembly are mentioned very fondly. Dr. Betty Gikonyo is mentioned on an event in 1964. There was a science club competition at the Duke of Gloucester, now Jamhuri High School. And Dr. Frank Njenga lost, and he has never forgiven you. You've got to deal with that matter. You'll also discover this is one of the books that I think is very readable. Typically, he says that those who write autobiographies start by saying, I was the son of a herds boy or a herdsman, and then I graduated to be very successful. But he says he was never in that space. He was weaned on sausages. So Dr. Frank Njenga speaks very boldly. One of the other things that he says that I love, that when he met his wife, Elfreda, he was used to simple names like Rose, Faith. Then there comes Elfreda. How do you pronounce it? And you may not know, but he had a beard like Samson before him. And on the day that he was shaving the beard, he remembered Samson and Delilah. And he thought that he would lose his oomph upon being shaved. But behold, he's here, as old as. You will also discover that at one time he was called Ojuku in honor of Chukwuemeka Ojuku of Biafra. He'll also remind you that at one time he was lifted by Patrick Shaw. I do not know how many of you know Patrick Shaw. He was lifted. How he came down, only God knows. But I want you to read, so that the beauty of this book is that he demonstrates that he is familiar with all the autobiographies and biographies that have been written. Whether it's the good Dr. Betty Gikonyo, or Dr. Gikonyo, or my good friend Dr. Aluoch, he's read all your books. My good friend Njoroge Regeru. Your book, everybody's been, Lukoye Daktari, you are mentioned. My good friend Gito, you are there. Githu Muigai, you are there. Professor Nyang Nyong, you are there. All of you are there. The beauty is that the book tells you and teaches you about Nairobi. How many of you know that there was bread called Elliot's? And it was sliced. And there were three varieties. The one in the reddish thing which was sliced, the one in the blue, and then the one we called the milk bread. He speaks to it. How many of you know that Koinange Street was called Sadler Street? How many of you here know about Dunham? How many of you know about Mukwa Ruben? Amazing. If you want to know about Nairobi, how many of you know that Chiromo is actually from Malawi, which means where the two streams meet? It's not mine to speak. Wisdom not only requires, but demands that I now stop. And stop I will. But this is going to be our next read at our book club. Dr. Frank Njenga, historians will remember you fondly. And in your book, you say that a man or a woman who has not traveled thinks that his or her mother is the best cook. You have traveled. You are a good man. God bless you.
masomo. Kazi ya watoto wenye kila siku ni kucheza. Tulikuwa vijana, tulicheza na masomo. Kazi ya watoto.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. This is the part where the author speaks, preferably good words. Consider yourselves ignored. Rather than speak random words, I will ask those of you who are here present and have been nominated for the task to kindly do the speaking for me. The first speaker will do so from London. Do we have Winnie? Alan? Go. Who's is coming on? This is what technology does to young people. It confuses them. They start thinking that TikTok is the only thing that works. Better? Shall we get one reader first to go before technology?
And no celebration. New Year's Day.
Oh, that's my granddaughter. Look.
Unlike those of previous years, there was no party, no hugs, and no celebration. And like most other families, we wanted to wish each other the best for the coming year. My wife and I were on video call, communicating with our daughter and granddaughter in London. They had been due to travel to Nairobi for Christmas a week earlier, but after testing positive for the coronavirus, our holiday plans were laid to rest, and we had to settle for a quieter and virtual ceremony. The conversation drifted to the 2022 general election in Kenya. Having met one of the leading presidential candidates a while earlier, I felt that this encounter had made our granddaughter notoriously political, in addition to her usual 11-year-old curiosity. As I tried to explain past elections and the occasional violence primarily based on tribal alliances, her curiosity was stoked. Her questions about different ethnicities in Kenya came thick and fast as she Googled away. Why are you and Grandma from different tribes? She asked. She had already gathered that I was a Kikuyu and my wife, a Taita. As I stumbled through my answer, she fired again. I know the Kikuyu like me, so what do the Taita like? Maybe hills? I smiled at her loose grasp for stereotypes, but I was brought back to seriousness when she asked, who will you vote for? And because you live with Grandma, will she have to vote for the same candidate too? Another problem now presented itself to our confused mind. My sister Vicky had married a Maasai, and all her children were Maasai, which must make her a Maasai. And yet my brother, Chris, who was married to a Luya, was not a Luya, but remained a Kikuyu. How then would they all vote? It's not that simple, I replied, mentally grappling with this intersectionality of gender and ethnicity. It is more complex than it sounds. In her Google search, she came across a coastal tribe called the Mijin Kemda, and I explained that they were a constellation of 9 sub-tribes lumped together for a convenience in local times, much like Luya and the Kalenjin, who are also clusters of sub-tribes. She then wondered whether one could, by visiting a Google store, download an app, apply, and, with a password, become a member of any tribe they wanted. If so, was being a member of a tribe like being part of a club, where you apply and you're accepted by other members, allowing you to belong to multiple tribes simultaneously? This conversation was becoming convoluted, partly because I had not meaningfully reflected on many of these themes. It became clear that I would need to put some of these thoughts into writing for this inquisitive child. I had tried to persuade Charles Njenga to write his memoirs for several years. He had lived through a critical period in Kenya's history, witnessing colonial rule firsthand and playing a central role at the independence and for years afterwards. Many lunches at Mathiga Country Club and later at his hotel, Sankara, yielded no success. When I failed, I enlisted the help of Givu Murai and then Attorney General. However, even over meals at the club, we met with the same response: silence. His passing robbed me of the opportunity to learn from a highly respected and knowledgeable man of my father's generation. The loss to posterity was profound. One of the last prominent figures of my father's era had now passed away. No one needed to tell me that I was next in line. Nobody seemed to really write that, what I felt needed to be recorded. Despite my relatively limited life experience, I felt an almost unbearable weight of responsibility. There was no more time for procrastination. I had to get started. I had to find a way to tell my story in a way that was compelling and did not require an apology for the life I had lived. This fact alone had been a significant reason for the paralysis that has held this work back for many years. Because my life story is not the perfect African story of a rural pain and suffering. I had previously thought that it would be of less value to the African people. Further reflection, however, now persuades me that many young Africans call the city home today, and their rural origins are distant memories of their parents or grandparents. I will take you through the life of time and times of the city boy, as witnessed over the decades. We shall visit, as one might with the travel writer, the schools, hospitals, shops, and cultural sites as they were in years past. We should also see how these have changed over the years, some for the better, while others may not have changed much. The rivers, lakes, parks, roads, and highways will also be featured. We shall visit different estates into the city to uncover how they got their names. In the process, we shall encounter issues that shape the young city of Nairobi and examine the corruption of its early days, which, no doubt, persists to the present, perhaps even to a greater degree. We shall also delve into the past to understand the key players of the colonial era, including the governors, chiefs, and their sons. Through my adolescent eyes, we shall examine the years leading to Kenya's independence and the immediate post-independence political events, including assassination as a political tool. At a more personal level, I will describe my challenges as an adolescent growing up in a city day school and the distractions ever present to a growing mind. The journey from living with white teachers and overcoming subtle racial prejudices to picking raspberries in Scotland at 17 and discovering the work of Frantz Fanon explains the shaping of my life's trajectory. Ultimately, this story is about origins, chance, and destiny. It reminds me that I am here not by my will or my effort alone, but as part of a grand scheme, one set in motion long before me and guided by a power greater than myself.
You'll be happy to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that that's the preface to the book, but more importantly is the longest.
It is a privilege and an honor to be opening Michael Carr's book launch with the first reading.
So don't worry.
I hope you all enjoy your evening.
I have been asked many times how this lady and I met. Our son, Njenga, who was not present when we met, will tell you how that happened. Njenga?
Right, I'm reading from chapter 2, Becoming a Man. Cupid. Cupid, the ancient Roman god of love, had put in place a grand plan in the way that only he could. When the bus stopped at Gill House, I saw Davies Lambu talking to my future wife. The conflict that arose was sorted out by hope and a belief in the power of chance. I was propelled into action by a force that I did not understand. Things then moved at a dizzying speed. I'd already paid the 35-cent fare to South Sea. But the future had put more significant pressure on me. I was ready to lose the bus fare and see what the future would hold. I had to meet the girl with the nice legs. At all costs, seeing the girl standing beside a man who could introduce me was too much to resist. Propelled by youthful ignorance and arrogance, I came running down the bus's stairs just in time to jump out of the now moving vehicle. Happily, I landed safely. Many years earlier, I had seen Andrea, who sold fabrics to my parents, jump off a moving bus. All one had to do was to jump off with a torso slightly bent backwards. The science worked for me, and soon I found myself in the presence of Davis Nyambu and my future wife. Pleasantries followed, and her name was revealed, Elfrida. I'd never heard of such a complicated names. I scribbled it and her phone number on a matchbox. On March 19th of the following year, we watched a movie at Kenya Cinema, Dear John. It was our first official date. The great God of love was smiling on me. Exactly a week later, March 26th, was her birthday. The second date was on this most auspicious day, with a lunch planned at City Hall at 1 p.m. At the time, I was working at Campus Ribeiro building as a junior clerk before attending medical school. Cupid, luck, and God worked together to ensure our phones didn't work when she called to cancel our lunch date. Also, she told me, good upbringing did not allow her to stand me up without prior warning. And since she could not contact me, she came. At 12:30, I was in my special attire at Charter Hall to meet the girl of my future life. Potato soup, fried chicken, and fruits cost us 7 shillings and 50 cents. A large sum in 1970. It was my first time in this fancy restaurant, and I was unfamiliar with the procedures of a place where only the rich were allowed. All went well, and we both returned to work for the afternoon. I knew something big was brewing, but I was unsure how to play my cards. The doors to my future had opened. The date had gone better than I had expected, and like me, she seemed happier than confused. Due to a chance meeting, Davis Nyambu had found a future wife for me. Traditional barriers such as poverty, youth, or tribe had no chance of getting in my way. That I had not even been accepted to join university did not seem to matter. I knew that was a foregone conclusion. A courtship and friendship that started at that bus stop now seemed to have been planned to last until one of us goes to the grave. Mr. Nyambu played a role for which, to this day, I do not give him enough credit. I acknowledge, with deep gratitude, his role in changing my life. I was in love and enjoying the feeling. She thought it was too soon to declare such strong emotions at this early stage, and there the matter rested for a few weeks. Before long, the all-important letter came through, P.O. Box number 11045, Nairobi, announcing my admission to the University of Nairobi to study medicine. This was taken matter-of-factly. I do not remember any excitement or celebration. After all, what other outcome were we to expect? All the hard work meant we were on course for the career of my choice. A girlfriend was simply icing on the cake.
I had a future before I met my wife. Vicky, my sister, will tell you what that story is all about. Vicky?
There are so many chips. I did it.
Just read and go away.
I'm older than him. Being raised in the city, my connection from extended family life was a complete and permanent. There are many cousins and relatives I have no recollection of ever meeting. Tensions must have brewed as our young family settled in the city life. Childcare and discipline were ongoing challenges, which may have prompted my two older sisters to be sent to a boarding school at an early age. We had a series of house helps as I grew up. Most of the memorable was brought to us by my maternal grandmother or aunt, who was older than my mother. These two women were my mother's primary support system, arranging everything to childcare, to a boarding school. One of our house helps was nicknamed Elvis because she was always singing. Not well, I must add, but she sang almost all day. Beyond singing, however, there was little she could do, according to my mother. Washing and cleaning were challenging for her. She would barely cook anything besides bad ugali and terrible sukuma wiki, that's kale. She did not last long after she ate my brother's half-chewed gum, which he had been chewing for days and storing under his bed at night. I am not sure why he never swallowed it. After much laborious chewing, but Elvis did it for him, which to his distress, he reported traversely, and Elvis bore the consequences. My brother, suffice to say, was a personification of drama. When the spirit moved him, he could cry like no other. He had two types of cries. The first and most common was a silent but dramatic one called the cry that starts with breathlessness. It began with short, sharp breaths and deepened into rapid gasping breath. If not stopped by immediate maternal attention, it would end in silent floods of tears and thick mucus from his nose. The second was far more theoretical. He used it the day Vicky, myself, my sister, unhappily tasked with bathing him, deliberately poured hot water on his side. He screamed. I am convinced could have woken the dead. My mother was understandably furious with her disobedient daughter and meted out appropriate punishment, though sadly with little long-term effect. Go further down. The bathroom was just a few steps from the kitchen, and by the time she arrived, the water was still very hot. My brother Chris had been whining consistently about something, and and in a moment of frustration and poor judgment, Vicky poured the hot water on his naked, lucky frame, scalding him in a manner never witnessed before or since. The whining ceased abruptly, replaced by a scream so piercing that the neighborhood heard it. My mother arrived at the scene with the speed of light, immediately focusing her attention on the wounded child, who was rushed to a nearby casualty department. As for Vicky, her punishment would come later. Her shame was immediate, though tinged with the satisfaction of knowing she will never be given she would not be entrusted to such a task. She had made her point about being forced into responsibilities she resented. Throughout her life, she has demonstrated the same unwavering defiance against perceived injustices.
Now you know. Mkora kabisa huyo. Mkora zaidi. Now I went to King George VI Primary School, which is now called Mbagathi. To represent my primary school, we have a reading already on the Kuko. Sharon, do you have it? Oh, there she is, the young beauty from my primary school.
Another change of school venue came in 1961. Our new school had been built, and Keynote had found its home on the present site along the Way near Anderson Hall. It was a huge school, brand new and custom built to the highest standards. The future for us had started. New teachers arrived, and some new pupils joined our class. Charles Wako and his mother Alice were in school. Charles would remain in my class from then through high school, and his entire family that stayed in touch. At last, we moved to our Papa's school. When our school days in Second World brought out at wooden military barracks. The new classes looked and smelled really good, from the glorious painting, the national permanent laminate. The initial 2 rows were adequate to house the entire school. Some bonus, the school was visible from home, with just 2 minutes to get ready. Lessons were becoming more intense, and a new subject, English, was to be taught. Before that, and illustration was Swahili, and the subjects were few and relevantly busy, mainly consisting of psalms, nature study, and religion. A small problem soon came to our attention. Some teachers had issues with the English language themselves, and they dared not confess to its difficulties. Fortunately, Mrs. Alice Wapo and Ms. Ndula were fluent in English, and we were taught many new words. Within a year or two, we became experts in this language and had our first English debate in standard 5 or 6. Kahama made the most memorable introduction to this debate. He got up and said, "As I stand here on my balcony," with those words, he rested his case and found his way fame is the boy who spoke the best English. None of us knew what a backbone was, less so how to teach and learn. Some people knew Kahama was in the same boat and did not know what is school. I visited the campus with some in my class. The event was organized by a lady who reminded me of Agnes Kanyele. Mrs. Mindy was on her way to retirement, having been born the year I started at the school. Plays, skits, and songs preceded the sumptuous lunch shared with the children and their teachers. We had bought books and other gifts to encourage the children. We were shown the original winner certificate from the music festivals of 1960 and 19. Zaituni had passed away the year before, and Jane was in London, but we sent her some pictures of the day. When we moved in as children, snakes, antelopes, hares, and occasional crocodiles visited our school. On this visit, it was as if someone had been asked to demonstrate to us a concrete jungle. What used to be plain field covered in tall elephants grass was now the Ngumo estate, the golf course estate, and camp. There was no inch of grass except on the school playing field, where a huge school was under construction. They call it modernity. This nostalgic visit to my old primary school marked the formal beginning of my retirement.
Thank you very much. Before retirement, I went to the infamous or famous Delamere School, now Upper Hill School. And this gentleman here will very quickly read and tell you the story of what our school looked like in January 1964, the year after Kenya became independent. Simama kijana. Aya, soma.
So, at Delamere, the order of entry, exit, and position in the school hall was cast in stone. The youngest into bracket, rebels, and shortest boys entered first and stood nearest the podium. Form 2s followed, then 3s, and the Form 6 boys at the very back, all tall and strong. A pin dropping could be heard for miles when the head boy ascended the podium. There was dead silence as I scanned the hall with eyes that seemed to convey power and authority over the school. The notion that my presence would silence the entire school population was almost intoxicating. Many years later, I understand why many people wanted high political office. The teachers would then enter the hall, and as the headmaster took the podium, we could have been in a military camp. This orderliness was reflected in all that we stood for as a school. We all kept time, as did our teachers. The lawns were well manicured, and experts had attended to the flower beds. The walls were painted green and gray in places, and some were white. There were no spot or mark in sight. Any visitor to the school would have been impressed. The window panes were clean and none were broken. The playing fields were in good condition and well maintained, always ready for use. On a visit to the school in 2006 to mark 50 years since its inception, sadly, the school had changed almost beyond recognition. Nothing that defined the school's character remained. The lawns, window panes, flower beds, and even the buildings had a look that made my old school a pale shadow of what it used to be. It was simply filthy. It had even become a boarding school. My old school was no more. To a large extent, the change at Delamere was mirrored in our society. A partial explanation for these changes was the increasing number of people demanding their share of the national cake, including access to education. Pressure on the government to provide basic education to a growing population had risen dramatically. Between 1960 and 1980, Kenya's population doubled. To varying extent, other social and political changes threatened to tear our country apart. The peace and tranquility that had characterized my adolescence were no more. Our fathers' promises made at independence to eradicate poverty, ignorance, and diseases remained unfulfilled.
High school is a wonderful time because it is the time you start meeting girls. Dr. Betty Gekonja will tell you how boys and girls meet. Modoni? Modoni, don't go up there. You can read from here. Oh, well done, Alan. Good effort, Professor. Thank you.
Page 2 and 3 of The City Boy. Jane Achieng, a girl from, it's becoming difficult to read. I would wish I read the book. There's a reflection on, yeah. Yeah. Good. I'll read the book. That's where I was supposed to read in the first place. Jane Achieng, the girl next door, and my classmate in Standard 1, was once such a friend. We would visit each other, taking advantage of social situations, including drama and music festivals. Saturday visits of social situations, including drama and music festivals. Saturday visits were a full-day affair. The day started. I'm having a problem. The day started early, soon after breakfast. Don't worry, this was 60 years ago, so you can imagine, the years we are talking about. The day started early, soon after breakfast. My rapidly beating anticipatory heart would announce the arrival of visit day. I would set off on foot from our wooden house in Nairobi West, often dressed in my only brown trouser, platform shoes, an African print shirt, and a cheap imitation leather jacket. The girls thought I looked as stunning as I felt I did. My head was full of hair, not like his now. In later years, I had a bushy beard that gave the impression that I was older and tougher than I really was. As I was told by my admiring friends in later years, I walked confidently. A short bus ride from Nairobi West would see me at the railway station bus park. From there, I would board a green malodorous country bus. I had people, chickens, bananas, yams, and goats for company on that bus. One had to be careful to avoid contamination from the smells of the market animals. Still scarier was the prospect of having the animals deposit their urine and fecal matter on my clean and neatly pressed outfit. That was the life then. At the Gikabura bus station, near the touch of the torch, I would arrive at my destination and prepare for the steep climb towards Alliance Girls High School in Kikuyu, Kiambu County. It was a dusty and sometimes muddy affair. But the price at the end of this brave adventure more than made up for for the problems it engendered. With the steep climb to the Church of the Torch done, next came the precipitous descent from the church grounds towards the school gate, permanently manned by two girls in those iconic green skirts and white blouses. Those of you who know that school will know who we are talking about, Alliance Girls High School, green and white. On one such visit, this is where the story begins, I encountered a light-skinned, slightly slender, don't look at me, well-spoken girl at the school gate. Her school duty that day was to stand guard, open the gate for those allowed to enter the girls' school, and welcome us. It was also her job to keep out undesirables. But this one was not undesirable. Who have you come to see? And what is your name? She asked with an air of authority. Despite being slightly intimidated, I answered the question to her satisfaction. And soon a message was sent to McPherson House. I spotted my host, resplendent in her school uniform, walking shyly towards me from a distance. Curiosity overcame some of the girls. A few would be seen from behind bushes, trying to figure out this short, confident boy who seemed to have the courage of a soldier. Little did they know how my heart was pounding with fear as they watched how Jane and I would greet each other. We smiled, and she led me to a secluded spot on the lower field to the right of the gate. The rules were clear and were strictly enforced. No physical contact. Professional life trajectory. Beauty Mwangi, later Betty Gikonyo, became a dear and valued friend. She and her family, including her grandchildren, have developed a close bond of friendship with my family. She and I remember the encounter well, and she remains a good friend. Indeed, one of my oldest. The authoritative girl has read that.
Thank you very much, Muthoni. So wherever you see Muthoni, Betty, she's one of my old friends. And now comes my most dangerous of friends. Professor Wariara Mbogwa tried to end my life at an early age, but because I am here, she did not succeed.
Oh my goodness.
Remove the container, Oria.
Jenna Cheng was my classmate, my roommate at Alliance, and that's why I met him. 3 years before this incident. I'm reading chapter 5, My Roots, page 113 to 114. Teenagers are creatures born to test all parental boundaries. This liberal approach was to be tested to the limit when I was about 17. A party had been organized at the home of Dr. Kenya, father to one of my classmates in primary school. He was a medical doctor and lived in the upmarket area of Kileleshwa. My friend Wariara Mbogwa lived in a block of flats next to St. Andrew's Church, a beautiful edifice
built in 1910 as part of the Church of Scotland. I had borrowed a motorbike, a Honda 90, for transport that day. Having picked the young lady, actually having my father surrendered me to him,
Ukweli mtupu.
a boy in a motorbike, and I'm the only girl. So having picked the young lady up from her home, we sped off past the University of Nairobi hostels and turned right at the top of the hill on Arboretum Road. The road wound down towards Kerichuan Dogo River at the bottom. It's important for you to get this. To this day, it is lined with a canopy of trees that make it beautiful by day and slippery at night, particularly after a slight drizzle that day. Now, I know all these facts, but as a teenager, I was not averse to experimenting with danger. Then tragedy struck. At the last left turn on Arboretum Road, the Honda 90 hit the curb on the opposite side of the road. As it flew into the night sky, its two rather frightened young passengers followed suit and soon landed on the soft, him on the soft one, me on the rock, muddy forest floor. Other than extreme fear, I had no injuries. My passenger was not so lucky. She had sustained a deep cut to the head, and blood was gushing out on a manner that would almost certainly lead to death in a short time. Fear engulfed both of us on two accounts. The first was that the injury turned out to be life-threatening. And the other, equally significant, was that we might miss the party. Then a miracle happened as we struggled to get out of the forest with the girl weighed down by the motorbike. A familiar vehicle driven by my father appeared and was soon to the rescue. My father had with him my two sisters, Vicky and Nancy. Vicky and Regina, who had been invited to the same party. He stopped to assist us. And it struck me that he would not have recognized us initially in the dim light from this car, with all the blood and everything. I loved my father, but from the moment he called us out from the forest floor, my love grew a whole lot more. He picked up my girl passenger, put her in his car, took her to K&H, and left me to sort out the matter of the motorcycle and the mud. As I pushed what remained of the Honda 90 down the otherwise safe Arboretum Drive to the Shell petrol station at the bottom of the hill, now a major intersection, my passenger was being stitched at the Kenyatta Hospital, 12 stitches without anesthesia. A detail he likes to forget.
Also true.
As would be expected, I left the Honda at the petrol station and looked for a ride to the party. We both eventually arrived at the party in Kileleshwa. She with a bandage on her head, and I soaked in oil and mud with grass sticking out of my clothes. Nothing could stop us from having a good time, not even a near-death experience. As was his way of doing things, my father parked his car a short distance away from the home where the party was and slept in the car until it was over. He then took us all home. This was a most unusual man who had his own way of ensuring the loyalty and safety of his children, and I dare say those of his friends. No other father of the 60s behaved this way.
Oh, we miss him so much. And so Wariara tried to kill me. Doris Kinovia, then Warohio, taught me how to go into public life and leadership. Doris is a pediatrician. She's my friend and my older sister. Doris? You don't have to go up there, Doris. You can read from here. Yes. Let me show you, Doris. Remove this.
So, good evening, everybody. As you heard, Frank has been a friend for many, many years. I grew up in the village. I grew up in a place called Giadieko. And Giadieko is in Githunguri. My dad would never, never allow us to come to the city. He used to drive us every day to Hospital Hill School and drive us home. I loved the city and I admired people who lived in the city. So I never knew Frank would write a book called The City Boy. So in order for me to feel some connection to the city, I would talk to my dad and beg him to allow me to have a party in Giadieko. And then he would say, yes, you can have a party, but not in the house. You have to have it in the valley. And that is where we used to have parties. I would ask Njenga to collect a lot of his friends. I don't know how they used to come. Was it by matatu or whatever?
Kenya, no, buses, the old buses.
And we would have a big party in a place called Kiamadare. And I would feel this connection with the city. Now I do belong to the city and I have all these city girls and boys with me, but I'm a villager. I grew up in the village. So I am going to read about chapter 11, governors, chiefs, their sons, and the rulers of Kenya. So during a visit by Governor Mitchell to his home, the firebrand Chief Warohio, who was my grandfather, spoke in the presence of Jomo Kenyatta, Eliud Madu, Bio Koinange, and others, that he had invited these potential Mau Mau agents who had almost certainly taken the oath is an inconvenient truth that disrupts the narrative portraying Warohio as a pure collaborator who played no role in the liberation movement. This version of events is further contradicted by what occurred on the 24th of May, 1951. Senior official from London. Again, all the key African leaders were in attendance. Jomo Kenyatta presented a memorandum to the crowd. Among those in the room were Eliud Madu, David Warohio, who is my father, and Bio Koinange. Though largely ignored by Mitchell, Koinange raised critical issues: the need for more land, the plight of the squatters from the Rift Valley, and the necessity of more educational and medical facilities for Africans. He was highly organized, eloquent, and diplomatic, presenting his case in a manner that will be rallied back to London. Warohio, in his own tactful manner, addressed the land problem, stating that his people were too crowded, and his proposed solution: the government allowed them to use adjacent forest land. He asked the government whether they could use the adjacent forest land. He also addressed farming inequities, requesting access to credit like settler farmers and permission for Africans to grow cash crops, that is tea and coffee. For those who do not know, before independence, Africans were not allowed to grow tea or coffee on their farms. His speech, which utterly dismantled the one-sided narrative of Warohio as a mere turncoat loyalist, ended with calls for increased wages for African workers, higher ranks for Africans in government, and his punchline, more excellent African representation in the Legislative Council, LegCo. Was this therefore the so-called traitor? As a final act of diplomacy, he presented Griffith with symbolic gifts: a staff, a bunch of ceramic leaves, matada, recognizing him as a leader, a spear, a sword, bow, and arrows, which in Warohio's words were to help him fight for justice due to his people. Of great significance is that Jomo Kenyatta and other leaders were present when Warohio made these remarks. Those without prejudice would acknowledge that Warohio possessed eloquence, persuasion, diplomacy, intellect, and a mastery of public oratory. It is also true that he opposed violence from all quarters and did not affiliate with the Kikuyu Central Association, KCA, or any other dissident organization. However, Warohio had many enemies, partly because of his strict work ethic. Obey orders from your superiors and complain later. That's what he would say. On the issue of land, Warohio was guilty of nepotism and probably some underhand dealings. The multiple attempts on his lives may have been politically motivated, but land disputes were almost certainly part of the mix. That Warohio was controversial is perhaps the only point of agreement among storytellers on either side. Whether his adverse childhood experiences influenced the course of his life, as I've suggested, remains a matter of debate and speculation.
Thank you, Doris. Soon after we went to a party in Doris's father's farm, I went off to the United Kingdom to pass words about our country. When I came back, I learned that there are some boys who lived in Kibra. Professor Laban Ayero, Vice Chancellor, Daystar University, was probably one such boy, but he will tell us what he's about to read. One of the very few distinguished boys who had the privilege of being my junior at the Delamere School. Professor.
Thank you very much. I'm here because I was a mono, and Dr. Frank Njenga was my head boy. So, and on one or two occasions, when we did wrong things, we would go to his prefect's room and brush his feet. His shoes, I mean. Dark secrets of the city, the area of the Royal Nairobi Club, Golf Club was vast, with the golf course consisting of 36 holes. I have no idea what that means. Golf course estate is situated on part of the course. We often found and played with the golf balls that ended up in the rough bush. Curiosity would sometimes get the better of us, leading us to investigate what a golf ball was made of. Unable to break it open using all the tools at our disposal, we decided to burn the balls. The ensuing explosions quickly taught us to abandon such experimentation. Beyond the railway line lay another dark secret of the city, often described as the largest slum on the continent, Kibera, also called Kibra. Holds many secrets and has a rich history that sheds light on some of the historical injustices faced by its people. My Standard 1 classmate, the very tall Ibrahim Amba, went on to become a well-liked local headmaster in Kibra and upon retirement, a respected elder. He was a man of deeply conservative Muslim views and persuasion. We remained in touch from our first meeting in class in the 50s, and he joined us as we celebrated 60 years since we started school at our 2017 reunion. It was incredible that Kahama, my other friend and classmate, was also present. Ibrahim's deep voice had not changed, nor had the self-assured confidence that made him head boy of our primary school. Through him, Kibra has remained close to my heart. As a young intern after medical school, my friend Richard Baraza invited me to work with him at the newly opened Olympic Estate, where we ran a thriving private practice in the 70s. Another boy from Kibra who made it big in the city, with whom I remained in contact, was Abdallah Bekar Bahit. He escaped the slum through Alliance and Thika High School and secured a place for himself in the boardrooms of leading insurance companies in the city. He became the managing director of Sedgwick Group of insurance brokers, and for many years played golf with the rich and famous at Muthaiga Golf Club. He was one of a handful of Nubians who escaped Kibra. Throughout his lifetime, he served in many influential positions, and at the time of his death, Willie Kiboro. He was also chairman of Harambee Stars Management Board and treasurer of Gor Mahia Football Club, and at the peak of his golfing days, he chaired the Kenya Golf Union. Through education and hard work, Bahit transitioned from Kibera to the upper market Nyali Estate, where he lived until his passing on in 2014. Sadly, very few make this transition. Those who tell the story of Kibra often overlook the remarkable achievements of the few original Nubian descendants who broke free from the cycle of poverty. The history of Kibra dates back to 1899. Unknown to many, it was initially a deep jungle, its name derived from the Nubi word for forest. It is now difficult to imagine that this slum was once a vast woodland stretching from its present site to the Ngong and Kikuyu forests. The region marked Kikuyu land's southern boundary and the Maasai's territories beginning teeming with birds and wild animals that greeted the first European settlers in Kenya. This desolate area on the outskirts of Nairobi was designated as a residence for Nubian soldiers who had migrated south from Sudan and Egypt. And in 1918, these soldiers were allocated plots of land in the military barracks at Langata were nearby, making it logical to house them there. Efforts to relocate Nubian families from the European-only area in the 1920s failed, and the slum continued to expand. The expectation into the city's planning. In a sense, it has remained a temporary settlement for over a century. These deep-seated injustices would later erupt in Nairobi, converse in an attempt to address the colonial government's iniquities, perpetuated and, in many cases, exacerbated by successive post-independence administrations. Some slum dwellers today may wonder whether the war their forefathers fought resulted in the prosperity and freedom so passionately promised at independence. I fear the answer is no, and that is not a secret. I just want to mention that I'm not a Nubian, but I grew up in Kibera, in Saba, and it is true, Frank, that for us, the rats of the gutter were supposed to have been born in the gutter, grow in the gutter, marry in the gutter, and die in the gutter. In those slums of Easter. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. So, read a portion of the book that deals with the crisis that occupy the minds of teenagers. I was no exception. Evans?
Amen. As I read this, it is so exciting to note the reason why Dr. Frank and of course his wife are deeply religious and would never miss church at All Saints Cathedral as long as they're in Nairobi. In the Sun, pages 121 following. When I grew up in Nairobi, racial segregation was the norm and went mostly unnoticed as a problem, since I knew no different. That schools, hospitals, churches, and even bus sitting arrangements were segregated did not attract my attention in any way. People simply lived where they lived, spoke their languages, and had skin colors given to them by God. In my childhood, I met two white women. One was Mem Sahib, the lady who introduced us to Jesus, and the other was the hospital matron who made sure we, the children at the King George VI Primary School, ate well and that our school was always clean and tidy. Mrs. Agnes Kanyele, the head teacher, seemed to fear both ladies and always walked behind them when they were around the school. We were expected to be in our best behavior during these visits. Mem Sahib fascinated me. Not only did her white skin hair flowing behind her small head was to her scooter, whose exhaust flames had a sweet, fruity smell. As she rode away, a gentle cloud of dust rose behind her, and as she descended towards KMTC, the dust and the clouds would swallow her, and she would vanish. This is where my childhood imagination would take over. This white woman seemed to know everything there was to know about God, Jesus, and heaven. Her illustration board had images of a white bearded God in heaven, happily in conversation with Jesus, elevated in the clouds. Little angels so smoothly. This was my childhood picture of where good boys would be headed for eternity. In images of the manger in which baby Jesus was born, he was surrounded by sheep, and his mother, Mary, was a white woman, just like Mem Sahib. As Mem Sahib vanished down the valley on her way home, she seemed to enter the clouds, and I was sure she had reached her home in or near heaven. She was, after all, engulfed by dust and clouds, just like another biblical character, Elijah. These images formed my earliest recollections of both Christianity and white people who was white. And they were or even God himself would welcome her. They would all have good food, sleep on comfortable beds, and get on with the rest of the day. They had only one song they seemed to know, which was Hallelujah. I was a bit sad for them because they had just this single song that must be sung forever and ever. And this confused me because Mem Sahib taught us many sweet songs. My favorite was, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. There were many others, so why they had only one song in heaven confused me. Sometimes the Sahib told us really scary stories. There was, for example, this dark-skinned fella called Judas, who had curly hair and a This would happen, in particular, whenever she seemed to have an opinion on anything. Judas and Jason were cruel. The former did something so reprehensible that it led to the cruel death of our Lord Jesus. The part where the Roman centurion pushed a spear into Christ's body gave me nightmares for a long time. This story confused me for another reason. Nobody could explain to me why Jesus had to die so that we could go to heaven. His death was both a happy and a sad event. Only adults could understand why such cruelty would end up being good for us all. Mem Sahib had yet another story that troubled me. It was about children who did bad things and how they would suffer in the fire underground together with the devil, who, in the images on the platform in front of us, resembled a witch and was black. I was sad for such children because they would ask for a drop of water to cool their tongues and we would refuse. This also confused me because in other lessons, like the Good Samaritan, helping others was a good thing. These subtle images of white being good and black being bad were not only represented in the classrooms and lessons, but also in the white hospital matron, who was clearly in charge of the school and held custody of hygiene standards. It all drove home the same subtle point.
So, to my rescue, following all this juvenile confusion, I turned to an age mate of my father's, Mr. Charles Njonjo, who really helped me to navigate the complexities of life. And as Mrs. Margaret Njonjo will now tell us, one of the complicated things that I confronted, well, Tata, do you want to go up, Alan? Mr. Njonjo really did help me with some very, no, you can read it here. No, no. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much.
Hazards numberless. Now, in today's world, presidents, writers, journalists, all have one characteristic, many, but one in particular. They're very imaginative with the truth. And this writer, distinguished though he is, has, I'm sure, been very creative with some of the facts in his book. On one such occasion at the Sankara Hotel, we enjoyed a large steak, we being Doctari and Marmazet. Seized with the ignorance of my youth, and in a sense wanting to impress with my recent readings of Kenya's history, I asked Mazet to tell me what had happened to the legendary Harry Thuku. I noted that none of Thuku's children featured in modern Kenyan history. An innocent question was followed by a most unexpected reaction. In the way only his close friends would have witnessed, Charles, as he was fondly referred to, picked up the well-starched napkin from the table, covered his face with it, and went into a prolonged session of laughter, which led to half of his body being under the table. I was helped by the waiters to retrieve Charles, who was by then in tears. I was confused. What was so funny about Harry Thuku? Why did my host literally go under the table? And why, as it now seemed, did Thuku not have children? He promised to tell me about Mr. Thuku another day. Charles died without telling me what was so funny about you. During one of those luncheons, Charles mentioned that he had not seen my mother for a long time and wished to pay her a visit. She had laid out a jolly good spread for her husband's old friend. The conversation was light and mostly historical regarding the past. We were lucky the house did not catch fire on account of the laughter and for me to carve for the special guest. Lucy laughed. Had not dared to ask. He decided to extend his visit a little longer to allow the tea to settle and make room for at least a small amount of meat. That was when the stories started. For instance, when did my parents buy did not seem to have any idea of owning property in such areas in the early. Used the newspaper for houses in the city. She saw an advertisement by Estelle Glass, a real estate agent. She called the number and was told the location of the house on Muhoya Close. She had not been to Lavington before. She went to see the house with the agent. She loved it and said she would buy it. She had no idea where the money would come from, but did not let the agent know this. The agent confirmed that she would reserve the house for her. That was in 1972, and the house was going for 275,000 shillings. She had yet to tell my father and had no idea where the money would come from. Banks were generous then, and soon the house and the tenant were all theirs. Charles Njenga was impressed by this story, ate a little of the meat, and left a happy man.
Thank you, Tata. It's a completely true story. Alan, do what you must. So some people say, oh, he's an old man. Oh, he has no friends. Brother Jero, come and tell the people that I have friends, but also in high places. This is one of my childhood friends who I continue to hold in very high regard. Thank you, Tata. Thank you so much. Brother Jero, go.
Thank you very much. Before I read this, which is page 349 to arrivals. The lady called Maria Mbogwa. Really? Since 1966, Anyang Nyong and I have called each other Brother Jero, much to the surprise of many friends and acquaintances. At the National Theatre, during the annual Schools Drama Festival, him, played a part in Wole Soyinka's The Trials of Brother Jero. Anyang was present and enjoyed the play. In the audience, I was present in the audience. Anyone who has acted in a play will understand how deeply an actor gets engrossed in their character. And I was no exception. The chief protagonist in the play was the big prophet, Jeroboam, his most trusting and naive follower, Chume, and Chume's wife, Amope. I, Njenga, played Amope. Yes, I was his wife. Through these three characters, I was led to think deeply about the construction of the church, as well as family, relationships, and the influence of God. This influence persisted despite my fully knowing that Soyinka was writing a satire, and that all the characters were the creations of his admirable imagination. This, however, did not stop my young mind from seeing some inconsistencies in the that the prophet Jeroboam is a crooked man who controls and contains his flock through deceit. His primary tool of trade on the beach is the insecurity of his flock, whom he sometimes refers to as satisfied customers. Brother Jero had taught them well. Of his flock, he tells us, I quote, I know they are dissatisfied because I keep them dissatisfied. Once they are full, they won't come again. Reverend, do you hear that? This tragic truth has not changed. It is well understood by many caught in the triangle between the suffering masses, their prophet, and the ever elusive provider of peace and happiness. Chume, my husband, is a little henpecked messenger with two wishes in life. One is to beat Amope for the sin of looking down on him and mistreating him, and the second is to achieve the rank of chief messenger. He believes that he can achieve both through the grace of his spiritual father. On account of the first wish, he pleads with the prophet for permission to beat me up. On his knees, Chume implores. All the woman needs is just one sound beating. But I've got to beat her, prophet. You must save me from madness. The man of God is not only the passport of poor Chume, but also the custodian of conduct between husband and wife, and the gatekeeper of sanity. The prophet keeps a hold on his flock by withholding permission to beat his wife because if he grants it at this stage, he might lose his most adherent follower. The church, here represented by Jero, exposed to me its shady and malevolent side as it manipulated the poor who could not see beyond the cloth. Another side of the clergy that I saw in the play, and which continued to be fully viewed in my adult life, is the image of cultivation of religious leaders. They maintain their power by ensuring that the flock literally and metaphorically looks up to them in all interactions. Draped in their princely robes, they stroll, exuding great importance, as though each step and breath is divinely orchestrated. Many develop strange accents, while others lose their mother tongues and require interpreters. Some, like Brother Jero, are simply crooked. As we discover in the play, the prophet owes Amope £1, 8 and 9. When Amope demands some money back, his response is, yes, thanks be to God. I hope you have not come to stand in the way of Christ and his way and his work. Unquote. This is not an uncommon stance even today, where debts owed by priests are protected by their relationship with Christ. Another striking revelation in the play is Brother Jeroboam's weakness for the daughters of Eve. He loses all composure when confronted by the limbs of a young female passerby. Like many who came after him, Brother Jero preaches from both sides of his mouth. He commands the flock to control their temptations, yet for him, the discipline is too much. He will chase after both the young girl returning from her daily bath in the sea and the woman trader running after a naughty drummer boy, her skirt hitched up for the chase. As Chume sinks deeper into marital woes, he bears his heart to the prophet, unwittingly allowing him to exploit his suffering for personal gain. Chume is finally permitted to beat the woman whose money the prophet refused to repay. Poor Mope is beaten almost to death. Charles Haminwa played Chume so impressively that during the performances, he struck me harder than the director requires. Still, all was well, and we won our category. As the play unfolds and Chume realizes that the prophet is a rogue and that he now has permission to beat Amope, Soyinka exposes yet another aspect of societal rot. Rumors were already circulating that there were some rotten apples in Kenyatta's government and that acts of corruption were slowly creeping in. The story is rather familiar. Allegations of government officers demanding 10% cut in exchange for tenders and government licenses were rife. A minister was suspected of involvement in a maize scandal, and all was not well. As Achebe later said, we knew things were no longer at ease.
Makofi. Makofi for Brother Jero.
My father was a pastor, but never behaved like this.
I knew Mzee Hesbon, I knew Mzee Canon Madoka, I know Mzee Sospita Magwa, all Brother Jero's father's contemporaries. These, in my very humble view, were true men of God. When they prayed, God heard them. Brother Jero, thank you very much. Now, as we come to an end, I am fully aware that I might have upset one or two, maybe three people. For that reason, Senior Counsel Professor Githu Muigai is here. If I have upset you, please see him. Don't come to me. Githu, come and...
Thank you, Alan. And here is the news, 1963. The tomboy Julius Kiano-inspired airlifts had taken place, and my uncle Chris Kahara, along with young men and women, had traveled to the United States to study and prepare for leadership roles after independence. In this regard, Kenya was fortunate to have leaders who deliberately developed an educated class to replace the British. Not enough credit is given to the visionaries who prioritized the creation of an educated middle class in Kenya in preparation for independence. This life-changing airlift brought Tom Mboya into contact with famous figures such as singer and activist Halle Belafonte and Sidney Poitier. I hope that's the first Black actor to win an Academy Award. Who is coming for dinner? I was remembering a movie, Frank, you've forgotten it. During this time, Mboya met and befriended Martin Luther King Jr., who welcomed him to Atlanta in May 1959. The following year, in July 1960, Mboya met John F. Kennedy, then campaigning to be president of the United States. For some reason, my young mind was acutely aware of the importance of Martin Luther King Jr. and Kennedy, a duo I greatly admired. I have no recollection of January 1961 when Kennedy was inaugurated as the 35th President of the United States. But I do recall the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, like I recall the Soviet spy affair in Britain, which was a confrontation between the good Americans and the bad Soviets, as we understood it. When the March on Washington took place in August 1963, it was Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream speech that made the biggest headlines in Kenya. A man known to our very own Tom Mboya had shaken the powerful USA with his words. Though I did not fully grasp their meaning, I knew something of great significance had been said by a Black man. We were proud, even if uncertain about what would happen next. Decades later, Barack Obama, whose father, Barack Obama Sr., had been part of this famous airlift, would achieve the dream by becoming the 44th President of the United States. The March on Washington signified that liberation was truly possible, or was it? The Black Lives Matter movement, controversial though it may be, casts a long shadow over how much progress the United States has made since this famous speech. Back home, political tensions were at an all-time high. A general election was due in May 1963, and the winning party would lead the country to full independence in December of that year. The stakes could not have been higher. The campaign was mostly peaceful, but excitement gripped the nation. KANU and KADU did their best to sell their independence agenda. KANU, mostly supported by the Kalenjin and coastal communities, feared domination by the Luo-Kikuyu alliance that was in KANU. Despite tacit British support, KANU lost the election by a wide margin. Years later, after lunch at Muthaiga Country Club, no less, Professor Githu Muigai, that guy, and I ran into Mwai Kibaki's bodyguards, who invited us to say hello to the president, ex-president. We both knew the retired president well, and our conversation was easy and pleasant. He carried himself like an older brother and a young father to me, bound by mutual respect. Just before we left, Githu asked about a famous 1963 photograph in which he, the president, and Tom Mboya shared a bear hug as Jomo Kenyatta looked on in a celebratory mood. That must be the most iconic photograph in the history of Kenya. Then, unprecedentedly, the former president began to cry. Not just a few tears, but uncontrollable sobbings. We were shaken. After composing himself, he recounted the moment, reliving the day the BBC announced KANU's landslide victory. Though they had expected to win, the scale of the triumph overwhelmed them with joy. But why was he crying now? Was it in the contrast between the high expectations for an independent Kenya and the reality of the nation today? He did not say.
Hey, Gedhu, you have not finished. Marimo. Gedhu, my lawyer, you have not finished. Umri.
Thank you, Frank. You've given me an opportunity to demonstrate like President Moore used to by running up the stairs of the aeroplane that he was not an old man. It now is my very great pleasure to invite a very dear friend and a friend of Dr. Frank Njenga's, and a man in another context who answers to me or was answering to me every Wednesday afternoon until a few months ago, and who used to address me as Captain. The Honorable Mutahi Kagwe.
A visitor to our book club. A regular visitor.
And a regular visitor to say something.
Thank you very much, Githu. Frank, hi.
Hi.
I can see from the way you are glancing at her that you still admire the girl that you met that day outside the bus, almost fell off the bus. And I can see from the way she's looking at you, she still wonders what the hell you are doing jumping off the bus. But anyway, here we are. You know, when Frank told me that he was writing a book, or rather, he didn't actually tell us, if you remember. We just learned as we play golf, he mentioned something about the book that he was writing. And we looked at each other, almost not believing that this book is ever going to be written. But surprisingly, here we are. He has actually finished writing the book. And what a book. You know, it is written so well, with so many issues to think about. And those of us who are in the book club, well, I'm not in the book club per se.
Yet.
Because apparently, and Baruch is here, and Alison is here, and Joanne, of course, you have to have some element of intellectual prowess. You notice that at the introduction, Lumumba was very clear about that particular issue. And as he continued mentioning the members of the club, I was waiting for him to mention me. Sadly, there is a certain area I don't measure up, and and you'll excuse me because there is nothing I can do about that. And the only reason why perhaps they didn't count me in it is because, as opposed to a city boy, I am a country boy. And when I read the book called The City Boy, it sparked my entire interest. The first thing that I asked myself after reading, I crossed the book, when Frank sent it to me, I was reading a chapter here and a chapter there, and I was keenly listening to the readers who are reading the book for us this evening. But at the beginning of the book, which is what struck me, is I began to feel my age. And the reason why I began to feel my age is because I began to miss a grandchild. Because this is the beginning of the book. The reason why the City Boy exists today is because Frank was responding to his granddaughter about challenges that he would not easily explain. So the book, in a sense, and Frank told me to respond to this issue as I would in the book club. So Joanne, you know how I'm going to do this. So the book is a real beginning of sorts, because it is the beginning of a relationship between a grandfather and a grandchild. And there's an explanation, it is a message, it is a history being given to the grandchild and explanations for the questions that he is raising regarding tribes, regarding race, regarding the country. I was going to say that if she asked you tomorrow what tribe she is, just tell her she is a Kikutaita. Because among other things, among other tribes that you could mention to her. But Frank has written this book as himself. Those of you who know Frank, and those of us who have associated with him for a long time, and as Gebu says, we have got a game, or used to, at least 3 months ago, before I went to prison. Gedu and I and Frank have got a Wednesday game of golf. And we talk a lot of things in that on that Wednesday, in those Wednesday games. And Frank has got a couple of characteristics that are represented in this book. One of them is his sense of humor. It runs across the book. Anything that is very serious, Frank can always explain with a sense of humor. You know, he is a psychiatrist. You know, and in fact, Gedu and I, because we was eating too long with Frank Njenga, we are always being teased in the golf course that we are his patients. Something we vehemently deny on every Wednesday and every subsequent day thereafter. But his sense of humor is what makes the book Frank's book. And what makes a book interesting? When you read the books that you do, what makes those books interesting? One of them is a sense of humor. And it is not just a sense of humor, it's also the way it is written. It's Frank. You know, when Frank alliterates and writes metaphors that relates to something that we hear him talking about, we can see him. I mean, how do you enter a bus? And your entire concern is how a goat is going to pee on you. which is what he says, his biggest worry. I don't know whether he worries about the goat, because of the goat pee, as it were, because of who he was going to see. You know, and he was going to be smelling goat pee, which is clearly not a very romantic approach. But these metaphors that run throughout the book, again, is Frank. So even calling the book A City Boy is Frank. He tries to illustrate that he's not a village boy. Lately, I have begun to doubt his cityness because of the amount of village talk that seems to cross us as we play on the golf course. And he seems to be retrogressing as he grows older into the village life. And then talking about politics, like every villager tends to do. So Frank, for me, and I think speaking on behalf of everybody who is here, and given that I've only got, he only gave me 5 minutes to do so, I just think that we should congratulate you for a wonderfully written book, having some very serious issues that you have tackled seriously but lightly, in a manner that does not take us to tears. He has tackled issues of tribalism in this book in a manner that we can identify with. He has tackled a very serious issue of racial discrimination, a boy almost on the verge of an inferiority complex, as he explains it. But somehow, he challenges himself out of that. So in a manner of speaking, it is not just the professor who got out of Kibra. There are many Kibras that are here that Frank has identified, and which he himself unknowingly also got out of. Challenges and tribulations that he has managed to overcome. And having worked with Frank at very close levels at the Ministry of Health, I can tell you that Frank has written a book that represents himself, that represents us, that represents our country, that represents yesterday, but then again inspires us because it also represents tomorrow. The only thing Frank hasn't done, as is expected, is that he has never behaved normally. Thank you and congratulations, Frank.
The last comment is deleted. And Professor Muigai has taken note, and he'll be contacting your advocates very shortly. Sharon, back to you. Thank you. I have really nothing else to add. It's all in the book. If you can't afford the book, borrow from your friends.
Thank you very much. A big hand. And also a round of applause for all the readers. Thank you very much. So the book is available outside for those who haven't got their copy. These are just little excerpts. Don't think you even have read half of the book through what has been said. It's really, I mean, you have to read it for yourself. But now we get to the main part of the evening, which is we're going to unveil the book. Dr. if I can bother you and Mrs. Alfredo to stand up there. Mutai, you can join with you as well. So also want the chairman of EAP, as he, yeah, to kind of join them on stage. We're going to unveil the book. The family can join them up on stage. Yeah. Oh. Just someone can help to bring this podium down, please. Do you need help? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, DJ. So everybody, as we get ready to unveil the book, I pronounce City Boy officially launched. Thank you.
Hope that this will last a while. We should make it last a while. You like a drink, so do we. Get more bottles, bring them to me. Hold your glasses up, people everywhere. Now everybody put your hands in the air. Say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Girl, I wanna hear you. I wanna see you tonight. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Girl, I gotta hear you. I wanna see you tonight. Oh, oh, oh. Let me see your hands. Oh, tonight is the night, the moment. Can't believe you're so beautiful.
I'd like to invite Alan to do vote of thanks. Alan Njenga. Okay. Oh, sorry, there's Alan. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Alan Njenga. For the last time this evening, allow me to be the voice of the author, as I hope I can do justice as everyone else has done before me. My granddaughter Wanjala must accept the credit for crystallizing my thoughts regarding the importance of writing the chronicles of my life on paper. This has been through her many requests for me to explain life as her grandmother and I have lived in our younger days. As will become clear to the reader, I owe a debt of gratitude to my parents, Rahab and Simon Njenga, whose love for me enabled them to guide and set me free at the same time. In a way that became increasingly clear as I grew older and became a parent and later grandparent. Through their wise decisions and at different stages of my life, I became the man I am today. In different ways, each of my children, Njenga, Kabura, and Alan, have enabled me to travel the journey of adolescence and young adulthood by proxy. It has helped me better understand how offspring from the same womb can share so much experience life differently. My 4 siblings' trajectories have enabled me to internalize the reality of growing up together, ending up as individuals. Our values and aspirations evolved in the same home, yet each is now a different human being with a story about what life has put them through. Special thanks must go to my eldest sister, Regina, who lived with my mother for the final years, caring for her with love and selfless commitment. She suspended her life to look after our mother on behalf of all who loved her. My office staff, led by Perpetua Mother, and including the long-suffering and dedicated Winnie Minor, have selflessly and with distinction assisted bringing to light a book that started off as a jumbled and seemingly incoherent manuscript. The staff and management of Chiromo Hospital Group, led by Dr. Vincent Hongo, have at different times supported the entire writing process. Njalale Baraza, the orthopedic surgeon, did an excellent job of organizing the book's chapters, did the initial editorial work, and readily offered insights, comments, and on the early versions. The book would not have been possible without his invaluable assistance. The publishing team at East Africa Educational Publishers Limited has outdone themselves with their steady hands as we have navigated the sometimes stormy waters of the publishing journey. The faith and confidence in me from the first contact with Mr. Kierie Kamau and Mr. Washira have enabled me to remain focused and determined when giving up seemed like the most appealing option. As the title of the book implies, and because this work is written primarily about my childhood, I must thank my two living classmates from Standard 1, Jane Acheng and Francis Kahama, for simply being my trusted sister and brother from the beginning of time. We must also thank all those who have read to us today, making this a special book launch. Sorry. The team has put together this whole event, led by Alison and Sharon, deserve a special mention for the many hours they have dedicated to this launch. All of you present are my chosen family and friends, and together with our host, Nairobi Club, we must give our special thanks. My wife, Elfrida, has literally been with me since I was a city boy who was not yet at university. To her and for her endurance, spanning more than 5 decades of ups and downs in the journey of life. I give my most sincere, grateful thanks to this point, to make this point, all the photographs in the book and many others are available because of her organizational skills and dedication to this, our joint project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as we come to the end, like I said, there's still books available for sale out there. Daktari, if you'd be so kind, he's still available to sign a few if you don't have a signed copy. We still have refreshments, so don't be in a rush to leave. There's still tea, coffee, and snacks. Alison will close with a word of grace.
And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us now and forevermore. Amen. Thank you so much for coming.
Hebu wandugu, sikizeni leo, tuwaambieni habari za Nairobi. Hebu wandugu, sikizeni leo, tuwaambieni habari za Nairobi. Mjini Mjini Nairobi kuna watu wengi wanapenda sana kucheza twist. Mjini Nairobi kuna watu wengi wanapenda sana kucheza twist. Ukipita njiani utapata watoto wanaimba imba na kucheza twist. Ukipita njiani utapata watoto wanaimba imba na kucheza twist. Hata wanawake wanawacha nyumba zao wanatangatanga kwa kucheza twist. Hata wanawake wanawacha nyumba zao wanatangatanga kwa kucheza twist. Hata wanafunzi wanasahau masomo kwa sababu yake wanapenda twist.